call this meeting to order. This meeting will be conducted electronically and be broadcast on CTN cable channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. Aaron, will we go through the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Berkowitz.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown. Not on yet. Okay. Commissioner Colvin Garcia.
I'm present. I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cornell.
Hi, I'm here, Ward 5, Ann Arbor. I will be able to participate fully in a minute. I passed 2 puppies on my way home from work, so I'm running a couple minutes behind because I had to stop and pet them.
Understandable. Chair Curtis.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Dale.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Vice Chair Graham.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Hans is absent. Commissioner Kothari.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Levin.
Hi, yes, here in Ann Arbor. Apologies for not being on video. I will try to fix that by next time.
Thank you. Councilmember Malik.
Here, calling from Ann Arbor's 2nd Ward.
Councilmember Mazlumian.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Nedrich will be absent today. Commissioner Overpeck.
Here in Ann Arbor, send the puppies over.
Thank you. And Commissioner Smith. Here in Ann Arbor. Great, thank you. And that is a quorum.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. So next is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have changes they want to make to the agenda or modifications? Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner, and then seconded by Chris Graham. All in favor of the agenda, raise your hand or say aye. Anybody saying no? Looks unanimous. Okay, does anybody want to make changes to last month's meeting minutes? Is there a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second by Commissioner Overpeck? All right, raise your hand to say approve them. Or is anybody saying no? Okay, looks unanimous. So next on the commission business, we have the deer dilemma, methods of managing urban deer in Southeast Michigan. And I don't know who's starting the presentation, but
we have a public comment.
Oh,
Chair,
I'm sorry.
Chair Curtis.
You're
No
right.
problem.
I was waiting to get to deer. I was excited. So for public comment, please call 888-788-0099, enter meeting ID 988-7619-2402. To raise your hand, press *9. To unmute, press *6. City staff will select callers who have raised their hand using the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. You may speak for up to 3 minutes. How
I
many
do
do
not
we
see
have?
anyone in the queue at this time.
Okay, now we're on to our C's presentation.
All right, should I start, Brooks?
Sure. Are you
Okay.
sharing or is Aaron sharing or?
Zach, do you, or one of the students, do you have, or Aaron, whoever?
Slides. Yep.
Okay. George, you're going to share the slides?
Great.
Okay, great. So my name's Mike Cost. I'm a lecturer in the School for Environment and Sustainability at the University of Michigan, and I'm a curator at Mathi Botanical Gardens and Nichols Arboretum, and I'm serving as the advisor on this project. So I think most of you are familiar with C's. Those who aren't, this is a graduate program where the master's students can do a master's thesis, a practicum, or a capstone project. So we'll be hearing from a group of students on a capstone project, which is typically those projects are 4 to 6 students working with an advisor, which in this case is me, and a client to address a real world issue. In this case, the client is the Southeast Michigan Urban Deer Coalition, which is chaired by Brian Farmer, who is here today. Brian is the Deputy Director of Special Services at the city of Farmington Hills and has been really spearheading, leading the effort for municipalities to work together regionally to address deer management. Rather than a one-by-one, they're working regionally. So that's what he's been spearheading, and our students are working closely with Brian to develop a plan to do that, to work regionally together. So with this, I'll turn it over to the students and let them begin.
Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. And we are a group of students from the University of Michigan, and we've been working on this project for the past 1.5 years. And this project is focusing on the management of urban deer population in Southeast Michigan. And this is our team with our advisor Mike and our client Brian Farmer from the city of Farmington Hills Special Services. My name is Chelsea Young, and I'm a second-year master's student at U of M studying ecosystem science management and geospatial data science. And this is the content we're going to be covering today. I'm gonna briefly introduce the background of deer overabundance issue in Southeast Michigan. And next slide, please. So historically, deer are overpopulated due to 3 major reasons. The first one being a lack of natural predator, and followed by overly strict hunting regulation and the decline in hunting participation. There's also an increase in deer habitat from fragmentation and edge effects. The graph on the right shows a general trend of deer population in the United States, and we could see a significant increase after the beginning of the 20th century, and it kept going until today. Up to year 2024, statistics shows that we have an estimated number of 35 deer per square mile in the state of Michigan. So we researched both ecological and social impacts of deer, and their ecological impacts are mostly to do with forest regeneration and forest structure. So as deer selectively browse on the seedlings and saplings that are slow growing and high nutritious, so over time the forest is likely to be taken over by fast growing unpalatable tree species. Deer also destroy a huge amount of ground cover vegetation, especially spring ephemerals such as trillium, and also including rare native plant species. And from that, there's also likely to be a higher proportion of invasive species in the forest. Wildlife that's live in the forest are also impacted, including birds, pollinators, and predators who seek food and shelter from the forest. So in terms of the social impact, we collected data mostly from the county of Oakland because that's where the project is based on. But so this is like the data shown on this page is mostly from the Oakland County. So the SAMCOG survey shows that 70% of people are concerned about deer in Southeast Michigan, and one of the most severe problem caused by deer is deer vehicle collision, and it creates both personal safety problem and a financial loss. In 2023, Oakland County has a record of 2,125 deer vehicle collision incidents, and it ranked at the second place of the entire state. The survey also collected some other concerns regarding deer, and the first 3 being deer vehicle collision, tick and tick-borne disease, and damage to landscaping. Now I'm going to pass on to Zach to talk about the client mission.
All right, thank you, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Kavanaugh. I'm also a second year's master's student at SEAS, studying ecosystem science and management. And now that we have that kind of the background of the issue and the impacts related to it, we're going to talk about now how our capstone team directly fits into the deer management picture. So go ahead, George. So just a brief history of Farmington Hills. This project kind of originated there. In 2015, that's really when they started conducting the research about deer in their area, and that came after several years of the increased impacts detailed by Chelsea, as well as growing frustration and complaints from their residents. But it was quickly realized after a couple years of data collection that a regional approach to this problem was going to be more effective than the city by city approach that had mixed results in other areas. And eventually that's what led to the formation of the Southeast Michigan Urban Deer Coalition in 2021, which I'll get into a little bit more detail in a second. But that kind of started off this regional approach, and you can see some of the events that happened over the years. But it kind of has culminated in the first regional deer management program being passed for City of Farmington Hills, Farmington, and Southfield in 2025, as well as the establishment and the draft of the Michigan Statewide Urban Deer Management Plan that we had a direct part in that we will detail in this presentation. So to give a little bit more context for the coalition itself, again, it was established in 2021 and has approximately 25 to 30 communities and organizations spread throughout the region. The main goals of this coalition was to create a sustainable, healthy deer population while also balancing and reducing those socioeconomic impacts related to deer overabundance, as well as reinforcing the longevity of the urban deer management practice and doing it in that coordinated and collaborative approach. And right now, the current priority is continuing to develop the guidelines for local governments to adopt. And a quick note about membership, it is extended to areas across the state. And basically, you can have a city manager or a representative from your local government participate in the meetings. And it's a great way to hear what's going on around the region, ask questions, and kind of just keep a pulse on what's going on with the deer management movement. So with all that in mind, go ahead, George. So this is where our capstone project directly got involved through the development of this Michigan Statewide Urban Deer Management Plan, which really was the backbone of our capstone project. This plan is a document that contains resources, templates, methodologies, cost benefit analyses to be adopted by local governments and utilized in every stage of a deer management project. So we are going to go through each part of this plan, but just to give you a general overview of it first, we kind of built the plan on these three foundational pillars. We wanted to talk about the ecological aspects of deer and deer overabundance, as well as the social impacts and the social context related to it. And then our third pillar was focused on all things related to implementation of these plans, which really focuses on education and legislation. And then we also had on the next slide three foundational goals of the plan, which we had in mind while writing it and developing it. We wanted the plan to be standardized so that each organization or government using it is following that similar process and similar steps throughout, creating that regional approach rather than isolated city by city, everyone doing kind of slightly different things. We also wanted the plan to be easily adoptable, but providing templates and resources so that a community can plug in their information and instantly have those materials made for them rather than having to create everything from scratch. And then we also wanted the plan to be flexible. So we give a number of different strategies and techniques to be able to use in a area based on that area's scope of their project as well as their needs. So with the goals and those pillars in mind, this is kind of the general structure of the management plan. We decided to use a phased approach, which was based on prior research done by Cornell and kind of based on other successful case studies for deer management programs. I'm just going to surface level talk about these, and then we're going to deep dive into the different parts of each of these phases. But starting off phase one, that's kind of your initial data collection and problem definition. This is where you're quantifying the current status of deer in your area and the deer impacts. Phase two is about the initiation of a management plan. So this is where a management plan is proposed and then voted on by a city council or municipal authorities. Phase three is implementing that management plan if it is passed in phase two. This has a bunch of different considerations with it, what techniques you use, where it's done, and we'll get into more details about that. And then phase four is all the long-term considerations with adaptive management in mind. So making sure you continue your data collection and monitoring to make sure your plan is actually working and how the community is responding to it. So with all that in mind, before we deep dive into each phase, we wanted to just have everyone keep in mind as we go through it. Imagine your local community and think of uh, how deer are, the current status of deer in your neighborhood or area. Think about the different of your neighbors and residents' opinions on deer and what the goals of a potential deer management program would look like for your community. So with that in mind, I will pass over to Lauren, who's going to get into phase one in more depth.
Thank you, Zach. Hi guys, I'm Lauren Jones. Also second year master's student. I'm studying ecosystem science and management and environmental policy and planning. I'll take us through the first phase of our management plan. Next slide, please. We really want to emphasize that beginning with resident surveys is a fantastic way to set a baseline and understand the foundation of what your community might think about deer, what their most pressing concerns are, what aspects of deer impacts are impacting them the most. This is the time where you get to understand the socioeconomic impacts at hand in your community. We started our project by looking at precedent from the SEMCOG survey, which is what we saw earlier. So continuing that style of resident surveys is very important before you start your management plan, because the answers to those surveys, of course, will then help influence what priorities and what decisions you make with your management plan as you go forward. Like as an example question, you can ask people how much deer damage has cost them, whether that's in vehicle damage and personal injury with the deer vehicle collision, or even just to landscape damage, because that can really add up over time. Next slide, please. We also we didn't get to interview any deer for our project, but we do think it's very important to get counts of deer and get a read on where deer herds are within your community, where they're moving, how dense deer are in the area. And continuing this data collection will help give you hard metrics to see as you implement, if you are doing it effectively, if it's actually paying off in the way that you hope so. So you can take deer count surveys in a couple of different ways. You can do drone surveys and aerial surveys. And then you could also do on-the-ground motion camera surveys, all with the intention to count the number of deer, see where they're going, see where they hang out, trying to understand the deer population before you look to manage them. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is a really cool aspect of the project, at least in my opinion. A deer exclosure is a really cool way to not only get more insight onto deer impacts on an ecosystem, but it could act as a really great visual tool and an education opportunity. It essentially, as this diagram shows, you would fence off an area of forest or in a park to give a visual representation of what it would look like if deer did not browse in that area as frequently as they are. And then you would have a control plot. It would be farther away than what's being shown right now, but a control plot to reference that in your data collection to show what deer impacts are currently. And ideally, as deer management is implemented, those two plots should start to look the same. So that would be a good indication that what you're doing is working. Yeah, it sets a really good baseline for the extent of deer impacts. And if it's near a trail, it's a really cool visual and an opportunity to teach people something new. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to hand it off to George, I believe, to talk about the next phase.
Hey, hello, everyone. I'm George Ackerman, also a student at SEAS, specializing in environmental justice. I'm going to be taking us through phase two, which is management initiation, kind of the result of all of your data collection efforts and what happens next. So this typically would start with something like a city council study session and resulting public hearings. This is where you would present the data collected in phase one to relevant stakeholders, likely a city council. Study sessions typically include background information, impact assessment, which is really where the heart of the data is that you collected in phase one, potential ways that you're proposing to manage deer, information about costs and benefits, and also an opportunity to hear concerns from municipal authorities and the public. You can see we did a presentation in Farmington Hills last March at a city council study session. Then you would potentially move on to introducing a resolution. So this is the core legislation that allows for management to begin. We developed a template for communities to use based off of what Farmington Hills and other communities ended up passing. Core aspects of almost every resolution we came across were the data from phase one supporting your program, management partners, typically the USDA or another partner, plans for venison donation aspects of the program, suspension of relevant ordinances, future planning. Some cities include deer management in things like their Parks and Recreation master planning process, as well as safety aspects of your plan, which is important. And at the same time, you would be potentially developing educational materials around deer coexistence. So our visual here is a brochure page that we made as part of this project, detailing deer-resistant plants. We know a lot of people have problems with landscaping plants and deer, as well as safety on the roads involving deer. So really the goal of this is to foster collective understanding, manage some of the conflict that we all know comes with deer management programs, creating an informed and empowered public. So common methods, like I already mentioned, brochures, developing websites. There's lots of great examples around Michigan of community websites that include a lot of information about deer management programs. Signage in parks is a good way to do it, as well as press interviews. And next, I will be handing it off to our teammate Tristan to talk about phase three.
Thank you, George. My name's Tristan Compton. I'm a second year at SEAS studying ecosystem science and management and geospatial data science. For our third phase, we focused on how to implement our project plan. Next slide, please. Beginning with site selection. Here we focused on what to look for in land area characteristics such as the land health, terrain, and deer population density to identify the most suitable locations. From there, we looked at public land, especially large parcels, and ecologically significant parks. These are areas based on accessibility, habitat quality, topography, total land area, and any potential impacts or concerns. We also considered connected private lands adjacent to public areas. By including these properties, it supports safer management, encourages landowner engagement, improves preparation, and allows for a shared agreement across boundaries. Next slide. Next, we examined lethal management, which remains the most effective strategy for reducing deer population. These efforts work best when coordinated with federal, state, municipal, and collaborative partners within. Now, within lethal management, we focused on two methods: sharpshooter calls and organized hunts. Sharpshooter calls used trained professionals after regular hunting seasons to help reach target reduction goals, which can cost around $5,000 per evening, while organized hunts rely on qualified archery hunters participating a set number of times per year and are generally lower cost while still contributing to the population goals. Next slide. We also reviewed the non-lethal management methods, which are especially useful on private property in low-density areas or as supplements to lethal approaches. These included fencing, repellents, deterrents, and habitat or landscape modifications. And next slide. Finally, we looked at venison donation programs, which partner with local food banks, provide a substitute for ground beef, and supports community food needs. These programs require accurate reporting of donated pounds, high-quality meat safety checks, and a reliable distribution network. And with that overview of our management methods, I will now hand it back off to Lauren.
Thank you, Tristan. All right, I'm gonna wrap us up with our last phase of the project, which is pretty much a reflection and an extension of our first two phases with continuing public engagement and continuing that data collection and evaluation of your program. So these are our two main pillars of what we mean by evaluation. These are the two things that we prioritize in the plan. Deer management as a whole, this is a multiple year commitment in order to see any tangible progress. Through the research that we've done, we found that you need to have a deer management program up and running and data being collected on it for about 5 years before impacts start to really take hold. So we highly, highly recommend continuing that same ecological and social surveying through that time period and then after. And then additionally, with long-term public engagement, it is very, very important to keep a finger on the pulse of the community as management is happening. You want to continue to maintain a happy twofold relationship with the community so they feel like there's transparency with the program and trust with the managers and the people that you're looking to serve.
Recording in progress.
Next slide, please. And then here are some strategies that we came up with as methods to enhance this public engagement after management has been implemented. We have an idea for a citizen science activity. If you think back to that exclosure diagram, you can put up a sign nearby the exclosure, nearby that really cool visual contrast that you'd get on the sidewalk. And you can have a QR code on there and prompt people who are passing by, who are curious, to either take a photo of the exclosure and add to photo monitoring. Or you could ask them a couple of quick questions about the types of plants that they see within the exclosure, what types of plants that they see outside of the exclosure. If the survey is designed really well, it could also be used as supplemental data, which is really cool. Then we have an assortment of public education programming. This could look like informational hikes or nature classes for families and youth to be involved in, more of those easy to read and approachable brochures like what we showed earlier. We basically just want to make sure that the public has an accessible entry point to information and getting educated about it, and places where they can come to you with comments, concerns, questions, any sort of input on the management program. And then finally, we really think that continuing resident surveys is a very integral part of making sure that your program is doing what it needs to and doing what people are hoping it's doing. It could also give you good insight as to if a deer herd is moving between neighborhoods. Let's say respondents from one neighborhood say that deer management is working really well and they're seeing a positive impact from it, but the neighborhood next door is suddenly seeing a huge uptick in deer and therefore the impacts that come with them. That could give you some sort of inclination that deer are moving from one neighborhood to another, and then you can adapt your management plan as such to respond to that. Next slide, please. And then just to wrap it all up and to really emphasize the purpose of our project, implementing deer management on a regional scale is so important to ensuring that there is tangible impact and healthier ecosystems and safer communities all across Michigan. Deer don't listen to city boundaries. Deer management, in our opinion, should not either. So collaborating with multiple different municipalities is a really great way to ensure that this is done right. We already have 3 cities who are on board. Farmington Hills, Southfield, and Farmington have passed deer management legislation all together, and they are adopting our urban deer management plan as we speak. And we have multiple other municipalities who are interested and in serious conversations for jumping on board as well. And yeah, stimulating this effective collaboration on this issue between multiple different groups, organizations, cities, townships, all of that is really important for success on a broad scale. Next slide, please. This is just a couple of acknowledgements for all the wonderful people who have helped us do this project and make it real. Special thank you to Mike and Brian who are here with us today. Next slide. And then that's all we have. We will stick around for some questions. We'll answer any and all questions that we can, but thankfully, Mike and Brian are here to help us answer questions that we might not know the answer to, or any more specific things that you guys want to know. So thank you so much for having us. Yeah, ask away.
So I'll start. What is the current status? Has anybody started doing a deer call yet?
I'll answer that. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We began the process in this past winter with the first regional deer call with Southfield, Farmington, and Farmington Hills, and there was there was a number of deer harvested. The report's gone out to the media as of about 3 weeks ago, and there wasn't a lot of attention, thankfully. So, we gained positive results. We worked directly with the USDA to do a sharpshooter call. It took some time. The weather was crazy this year, very cold. But between January to March, deer were harvested, and over 2,000 pounds were distributed to food banks. Local food bank called CARES is where Farmington Hills and Farmington deliver their deer to, or their venison. So the sustainable, became a sustainable resource for our food bank. And our plan is, it was approved by the council to continue on annually. So next year we'll begin organized archery hunts. So like the team described, it's a minimum number of days. So for example, take 5 days out of the entire month of January, and we're going to work with voluntary public safety officers to begin the process to harvest deer through archery or bow or crossbow. So for harvest goal, for example, in one community was 100 deer, then it would be to take as many deer through the hunter. So it might be 50, and then come in with sharpshooters to reach harvest goal to match 100. So our plan is to continue that process. So that might answer. Yeah, we've begun. So Livonia is going to be doing sharpshooting next year. They've signed the agreement with the USDA. So that's now 4 neighboring communities. There's several other communities within the coalition that's ready to. They began the first phase, as the students described, of the collecting data, and we anticipate annually that more and more communities will jump on board. And the difference between, when we started our research in 2014, we went to the DNR in 2015, and they used Ann Arbor as the example, because you guys did a lot of work, a lot of testing different things, what can work, what can't work. And you guys were the guinea pig, and you went through the ringer. I mean, you guys had a lot that you did good stuff. And so we took some of that good stuff, like the community deer survey, and started doing aerial deer surveys. A lot of data collection. And finally, our council decided to make a decision in 2025. In the meantime, and this is a little bit of context to where things are going to go, because the students, the work that they did really took this to a level that now it's become real. So I was put on the deer management initiative team by the Natural Resource Commission and the DNR in 2024, and I represented there's 24 Lower Peninsula and 24 Upper Peninsula people, and I was representing the urban deer group because we all have an issue with deer in urban areas, and a lot of urban areas do. So from there, the idea of an urban deer management plan was, I pressured that idea to say we need to come up with a plan that cities can we can standardize, and we can give the education and resources for communities to make a decision, versus every community trying to figure it out on their own and left with very little support and leadership. So with this plan, now there's something called the Deer Advisory Team that the DNR has established with the Natural Resource Commission. And now I'm leading a subcommittee of that Deer Advisory Team to focus on the statewide Michigan Deer Management Plan. The Urban Deer Management Plan will now become part of that statewide plan. So we're reviewing a lot of this work that's been done by the SEAS team. and the resources and templates will now, the goal is to have that be approved by the NRC to be implemented into the larger state plan. So then when cities have issues with urban deer management, they can utilize that plan and move forward in the process.
Thanks. Commissioner Levin?
Yes. Thank you, first of all, for the presentation. And as was alluded to, yes, Ann Arbor, as most of us know, did have a deer call thing for a while. One thing they did have that I didn't hear you mention was sterilization. Has that now been determined to not necessarily be the most efficient thing to do? I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that method.
So we and I'll say something first, and if anybody else wants to join in. So obviously that was when it comes to the larger decision, sterilization was brought up in that, and you guys probably all know the history. In 2018, Governor Snyder had done a proposal to not allow sterilization. Then the DNR had to do a report. They didn't want to lose the control and power to be able to implement that if they were to use it as a resource and a tool. And in the research in free ranging deer, it's not been proven to be successful, but in more closed populations, like an island or fenced in areas, it can be successful. So if everybody were to do sterilization across the entire state of Michigan, it could work. But the cost of that and the logistics in doing that, it becomes very difficult. So the DNR recommended, as well as in our research, that lethal measures for deer population control are recommended. And so with that, we took that recommendation, and that's how the plan was developed. In turn, we found more benefits to that approach versus the sterilization or the items such as not are approved, like vaccination or relocation. Those are not approved methods in the state of Michigan. So anybody else want to join in on that answer?
I think the only thing I would add, I think you got it all. Another consideration is just like the time frame of these management programs, and how that could be impacted by the management technique chosen. We've already encountered a lot of people in Parkdale Hills that want the management to be done in a very quick time frame, which isn't realistic, and potentially doing management techniques like sterilization and stuff would prolong them seeing the impacts from it even longer. So that's just another consideration that we've found in the research as well.
Councilmember Malik?
Hi, yes, I would like to also express my thanks for the presentation. Clearly, a lot of work went into it, so thank you, and especially Mr. Farmer, thank you for providing your experience as well. I guess my question is related to the conclusion noted implementing that successful implementation on a regional scale is vital. And so, the participants so far kind of signing up for this process are, pretty urbanized cities in Southeast Michigan. So I'm curious how outreach has been to maybe some of the more semi-urban neighboring townships. I feel like it'd be really crucial to bring them on board to have success in something like managing deer population, and have, any more semi-urbanized townships near Farmington or Farmington Hills, expressed interest, or has there been any thought of or is it even possible to bring on counties, I guess, to do some of this, really kind of hitting home that regional approach?
So Oakland County is part of the coalition. So when we talk about the coalition, it's not an advocacy group. It's a group of people that have the same problem that we're trying to solve together. So a lot of the work that the students presented was began by the coalition to say, okay, what are our problems? What do we need to do to solve them? How do we work together to collectively do the same type of work and standardize it, versus everybody trying to come up with their own ideas, hire their own separate people, separate biologists, and really, so we came to the understanding that and everybody agreed with that concept, like you're saying, like we all need to work together because the deer are crossing the streets and the borders. And so the county has been supportive with it. The DNR has been supportive. We've developed relationships with organizations like I'll describe briefly the future of management in terms of lethal means and population reduction to not eradicate the deer, but bring it to more of a healthy herd and a balanced herd to reduce deer impacts such as native plant species. And that's the major thing is the ecosystem and the effects on that, not just the deer vehicle collisions and landscape. So imagine now we've got this plan in place and the city of Farmington Hills says, okay, we're going to do the organized hunts and we're going to do the calls, and 6 other cities are doing the same thing. Well, who's going to identify the parcels of property that these hunts will take place in? So there's a couple ways this is sort of rolling out. And one way is the USDA is creating positions within their department that are shared positions. So shared wildlife biologist positions. So there's right now a proposal from the USDA to work with Farmington Hills, Southfield, and Livonia to have a one shared staff person that actually handles all of the wildlife concerns that we get. So goose management, what do we do about a dead coyote or a deer or certain things that we have concerns with our residents call about? We can refer them to the wildlife biologist that we have a shared position with. The same way as the calls. So, for example, when a call takes place, it takes place in the evening, and let's say there's within those 4 communities, there's 15 different sites that they've identified that they're going to do calls in. Well, they don't have to stick with the one community to be able to do the call. They can say, okay, I'm in Farmington Hills at 6 o'clock. We're going to drive over to Livonia at 6:30. So they start to work collaboratively amongst those communities. So it isn't like community by community. So they have more resources available. They bring in more staff from the USDA to perform the call all at once, and they can spread out depending on where the deer are at that time. So they have camera technology that they're able to use, because a lot of times when it's one community, there may not be enough deer within that community that night, and they may not harvest that many deer. So by able to work with several communities that same night, they're able to go and be more successful, and then it's more efficient with those dollars that we're spending to do that. The other thing is, in terms of the organized hunts, the National Deer Association provides liability insurance for a parcel owner, such as if it's a private property. So, for example, a person has 2 acres of property that their home is on, and then but they keep calling about these deer concerns, and now their neighbors are doing the same thing. Well, there's a property form that the students came up with that now they spread to their neighbors. Hey, fill out the form and give them access to use their property. So if they do organize hunts, they can go on your property to be able to get the deer that were harvested. So that's became alive, and people are starting to fill out that form. And in 2027, we'll use those properties that we can have access to. At the same time, who's going to be able to do the shooting proficiency testing to make sure that people are able to shoot properly and with archery and crossbows? So the Michigan Bowhunter Association has agreed to do those tree stand safety courses and shooting proficiency tests. So it's really become a collaboration of a bunch of organizations within the plan versus every city. Like if Ann Arbor were to move forward with this, you're not doing it all by yourself. There's a bunch of other organizations that's going to handle this for us. And it's really, we're all doing it the same way. So hopefully that answers the question of sort of the direction this is going.
Yeah, it did. Thank you. I, recently toured a farm just north of Ann Arbor in Ann Arbor Township, so less than a mile outside the actual boundary of the city. And the farmer told us that he had 200 deer in his field just the night before. And so I can't even imagine, if Ann Arbor, went to great lengths to, manage the population, but Ann Arbor Township, for whatever reason, wasn't interested or didn't have the funding or what have you, to do the same thing, that, like you said, like the regional approach really is critical. So I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
So let me throw one more thing at you, because I'm glad you brought that up, because within the DMI in 2024, there was also, what are some non-regulatory ways to do a better job with deer management across the state? So one of these ideas that came out it's something called the Hunt Michigan Collaborative, and it works with farmers. So the Farm Bureau is part of it. The Soybean Committee has supported it. Several organizations across the state, conservation districts are supporting it. And what they're doing is they're connecting leaders to lead hunts on these farms to be able to help the farmer with those deer issues. So a lot of farmers will give access to hunters, but then the hunters will break the rules. They'll drive across the fields. They complain to their neighbors. They create arguments. So this program is through a nonprofit organization that is actually making sure all the hunters are following the rules. They actually put out ground blinds on the properties, and then they walk the hunters to the blinds. And then now you've got people they're able to get access to those properties to be able to reduce that population. So all of this is in part of the whole larger statewide plan. So it's not just the urban deer management plan, but now we've got the agricultural plan that's part of it. And then the larger statewide plan that includes hunting and state, public land. So it's really become a culmination of a lot of things that needed to come together. And there's a lot of changes happening with the state right now in terms of regulations and then these non-regulatory things. So the other thing that you mentioned is what are some other communities? So Saline is part of the coalition, Auburn Hills. So there's a variety of different communities around the 7-county area. SIMCOG has really assisted us with some of the survey stuff. So it's consistent questions. We have all of the 7-county zip codes of who filled out that survey in 2022. We proposed another survey be complete in 2027. So every so many years, we're going to continue to do that survey. So first, every city having to do a survey on their own. We're doing this one large survey together, and then we're able to produce those results by zip code. So we can distribute out those, even if communities aren't part of the coalition, we have those resources available. And at the same time, when it comes to resources, we don't have to keep duplicating the brochures that are created, and we can create best practices and then share those amongst our communities versus everybody trying to figure it out on their own. So yeah, it's exciting opportunities right now. And I'm happy to be able to talk to you guys because I think the more communities that we jump on board and start to work together, especially Ann Arbor and the work that you've done, I think it makes us all stronger to be able to say, hey, we're working together to try to solve this larger problem within our urban areas.
Thank you.
Commissioner Colvin Garcia.
This is a terrific presentation. I am the treasurer for Ann Arbor Charter Township. We are in a terrific question, Councilmember Malik. That is something that many members of our community are expressing is a keen concern. And I have a couple of questions well, first of all, the final thing that you were addressing, Brian, with regards to having, expanding the membership of the coalition, I'd like to learn more about how a community can join the coalition. What's the process? And then my other question is a little bit more specific, and it has to do with the availability of the deer meat processors. If that's something that's a constraint, I remember hearing, from people who are in my community on the southwest part of the state saying it's hard to find processors during hunting season. So is that something that you're kind of some challenges that you have faced? And is there a have you found that there's an excessive supply of deer meat? It's hard to get rid of, people don't like it, or are you developing like downstream markets for deer meat? So I'm very curious about that too.
So first answer is, how do you join? The Seas team created a one-page document that sort of describes the what it looks like with what the coalition is, how to join. So basically, we don't let just residents join the coalition and attend the meetings. We want city leadership to have a designee or a couple of designees, or appoint somebody from a commission or a committee. So as long as the township or city approves that person represent the area, then that's the only thing that needs to happen. So It's pretty simple. It's really a direct email to me, and then I make sure that the leadership is okay with it, and we vet out, make sure the person's good. The next question, in terms of processors, we've again with this collaboration, we're working with Sportsmen Against Hunger, Hunters Feeding Michigan. There's an organization called Dole Patrol. So there's a lot of resources out there that we've collaborated with that are supporting us. The problem with right now with deer processing is the cost to process the deer. That is one area that we need to develop a campaign to be able to get funding to be able to say, okay, once these deer are harvested, who can we have pay for them versus cities and townships? So that's one area that we're working to develop a way to do that. In terms of the demand of venison, when we've met with food banks and the Michigan Food Council, what happened with the state of Michigan and it used to be called Sportsmen Against Hunger that had the contract with the DNR that would take the deer and get it to processors for distribution. So that contract ended, and then the new contract came with the Michigan Food Councils, or I'm sorry, Food Councils of America or Food Banks of America.
It's Bank Council of Michigan.
Yes, thank you. So they work with 7 different larger organizations. So what's the one in Southeast Michigan? Because I'm drawing a blank. Not Gleaners, but the other one. It's large.
Food gatherers. Food gatherers.
One more.
Forgotten Harvest.
Forgotten Harvest. So Forgotten Harvest, there's several food banks that work with Forgotten Harvest. So the way it works is deer are harvested, and if Hunters Feeding in Michigan is working with the program. So for example, the USDA harvests 50 deer. They drop it off at a processor. At that point, the processor processes the meat, and then Hunters Feeding Michigan has a company that takes that venison to the larger Michigan food banks to distribute out to all the other food banks. So the 7 different food banks. So Forgotten Harvest gets a portion of it, and the other 6 get a portion of it. From there, Forgotten Harvest distributes that out to the food banks. Working directly with our local food bank, CARES, when they distribute venison, people love it, and it goes right off the shelves because the amount of protein that provides for families and the amount of meals that you can make, and it's all ground up burger basically that's used. So they don't make steaks, they don't do ribs. It's all strictly burger. And when you talk to those food banks, it goes quick, and it's a big demand, and people enjoy the venison. And then they provide resources. Here's some recipes that you can make with venison. So, because some people aren't sure about wildlife or wild game and how to prepare it, they're concerned about it, so they educate them on that. So it's a whole other part of when we talk about education. That's a big part of it. The other part is like educating people about hunting. They may not know, like it isn't people walking with guns down the street. It's very organized. There's safety mechanisms put in place for it. Some people want to harvest their own food versus going to the store to buy, chicken or beef. So it used to be more common, but as cities created ordinances, that's when we started having problems, and we started seeing a larger population of, deer in our cities, and there's no natural predators. So again, it's sort of answers the questions, I think.
Commissioner Overbeck?
Yeah, the great presentation. I might be biased a little, but I thought it was a terrific presentation in a master's project. One question would be, I'm just assuming, maybe you don't even have to answer it, because I'm assuming you have your deer tested for chronic wasting disease. I used to eat a bunch of venison back in the day, but I don't eat it anymore because of that. And another one is just more of a statement. I'm really like the resident survey that you guys are pushing, because that's a great way to entrain local communities. But that leads me to my question, which is, what kind of pushback are you getting or interaction are you getting from animal rights groups? And how are you dealing with it if it is a issue?
Well, I'm going to say we've gotten FOIA'd. We've a number of times. And when animal rights groups, you have some residents that are involved with that, but then you got a lot of non-residents that are fighting for the cause. And when the Michigan Wildlife Council did a survey about Michigan attitudes about hunting, and when you look at that survey that they did, less than 10% of the people are saying, I don't agree with that. And 90% are okay with it as long as it's for a good reason, like preventing crop damage or for safety. Or so you could look at that survey, and they did it across the state. So I guess when you think about every city that's faced this across the country, you are always going to have two sides to it. And the majority of the people are the ones that say, we have a problem, do something about the deer. When you do the surveys, when you collect the data, there's a lot of impacts. And by doing nothing is what the majority of our residents say, do something. But then a lot of times they're stopped by animal rights activist groups and people that say they don't want you to kill the deer. But at a certain point, you got to make a decision. Do you want to go with the majority and say 70 to 90% of the people want something done about it? Or are you going to listen to the smaller voice that says, just don't hurt the deer, but in the meantime, you're not solving the problem? And whose responsibility is it if you don't solve the problem? And the city of Farmington Hills, our council really stuck their necks out there and said, we have to do something about this. And in the end, it isn't about just people's landscape. It isn't about just deer vehicle collisions. It's mainly about our ecosystem and the impacts that it's making that people don't realize when they say don't do anything about it. You got stormwater runoff when you've got not native plants and browse lines that are up to as high as a deer can reach, and soil erosion because there's nothing on the ground and water runs through it. So it goes beyond. It's all about the biology when it comes to that. And I think the exciting part when Mike reached out to me about this idea, it's about trying to solve a larger problem. And I think the students spent a year and a half developing a good resource and templates to be able to help push this solution forward. And now with the support we've had with the DNR, the Natural Resource Commission, and all these other organizations to collaborate, it's now the time that we can actually, we're not in it alone like you guys were, in 2014 and earlier than that. It was tough times, but now, we can work together to solve it. So we can listen to that small voice, or we can move forward and solve the problem.
I just follow up. I mean, so basically, you must do some kind of outreach, or you just ignore them. I mean, it's better, I think, in these cases to do exactly what you just did with us, which is explain the rationale and the really strong support. Majority of Michiganders support it.
I reached out to the Humane World and the Humane Society and said, how can we work together? How can you provide the education to say, hey, nobody wants to, I'm a hunter. I'm not interested at all in hunting in Farmington Hills or a city. Like, I have no interest at all. I go out there for nature, and I don't really care to even shoot a deer. My dad's hunted all his life, never shot a deer. My grandpa never shot a deer, passed away at age 90. It's a whole different thing than what people believe it to be. And I'm not a person that's out there just to get rid of all the deer or shoot as many deer as I can. Where some people do want to shoot a big buck, or they want to help out and get deer donated to food banks. And I believe the more organizations that we can work together with, and I believe even let's educate people about sterilization. Let's explain to them what that means and how it works. And let's lay it all out on the table. But in the end, we have to make a decision how we're going to move forward with it. And that's the direction we're going is this direction with that plan. But at the same time, we're not trying to hide anything. Like, let's inform everybody as best we can.
I want to jump in just to give people, I've spoken to the commission, the Environmental Commission, twice before on deer issues. And so when I was asked to teach this Master STEAM course with 4 different projects, I thought of the projects, and I immediately thought of Ann Arbor, and I reached out to the staff, and it was clear it was just bad timing. It wasn't the right time to have staff. They the wounds were too fresh from what they had just encountered with going through. But I knew of this effort and Brian because I had presented with his predecessor at a conference. So I reached out and he was interested. So we got offered to go into, early on the first semester in March. Students had put together a presentation and we went to the city council to present at this study session. And I expected there to be a lot of controversy because of, what happened here in Ann Arbor. And what I was amazed at is how angry people were that when we told them it was going to take 5 years before we saw meaningful reductions in deer numbers, people rose up and were angry. 2, 3, 4 questions. Like, why is it going to take so long? What do you mean? It's going to take 5 years to reduce the deer? And I was just in shock because I expected the complete opposite based on the past experience. So it was very apparent to me, like what Brian's saying, is the majority of the people are angry, but they're not angry because you want to cull the deer. They're angry because it's going to take a while for this process to play out. So that was kind of shocking to me.
We get a lot of phone calls, just sort of add to that. And it's a lot of phone calls, and we've collected phone calls since 2015 and we've logged them. And that's what other communities, we encourage them to do the same thing. As part of this coalition, there's those, we try to everyone do the same, right? So we've had people say, their dog was attacked by a deer, and I don't make anything up, but then they want the city to pay for the surgery because of the deer hurt the dog. And then you've had older gentlemen, sad stories. His wife contracted Lyme disease, and because there's so many deer in their backyard and there's ticks all over the place, and now she's in bad shape. And it's story after story of like, what are you going to do about it? And I feel personally that, if we can do something and make effort, at least we're doing something. And if we do nothing, then we are to blame. So I'm honored that are proud of our council for making a really tough decision in a climate that was, both sides, but again, like Mike said, the majority were like, do something. And so they heard loud and clear, okay, we will. We're going to try to make effort towards that. And it's not going to happen quick, but we're doing our best, and it's going to take time. So our whole part of this the larger plan is it's put into a master plan. So it doesn't keep going back to city leaders to vote yes or no, we're going to do deer management. And that's where, I know that you guys face that. And that's why we got to put it in place to be a larger plan to say, this isn't going to go away. We're going to keep doing it because it's going to take time. And if you put a pause on it, you're going to have to start over again, because now that population continues to increase. We got to keep going until it reaches carrying capacity, and then it starts to reduce the deer population. And we want to get to a healthy herd to reduce the impacts. We don't want to get rid of the deer. And that's been, a message loud and clear. People enjoy the deer, but there's too many negative consequences to when there's too many deer.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I want to say thanks for this discussion and for dealing with this really complicated issue. I think it's really been well presented, and what really encourages me is the regional approach that you've described. I think that is where there's strength, because, as someone said earlier, the deer don't know the boundaries, right? Somehow we've got to do it in a bigger way. So I think, I guess one of my questions is with respect to, I'll just go way back to the citizen science and the exclosures. Are you tracking, is there a plan to identify the improvements over time in vegetation and in other areas that demonstrate changes or improvements in biodiversity?
I'll say real quick before Lauren or somebody else answers. We haven't put up the exclosures, but we are it's been taking time. We've had some staff transitions, but with that, when they're in place, they can explain like how we plan to do it. It's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna speak real quick on this, and feel free to jump in. I know other people did a lot of work with developing like specific methods as to like how to do this, but as a baseline, when we were scoping out where the exclosures should go, we took a walk around the large parks in Farmington Hills, the parks that they were thinking about doing deer management in. And we looked at the ground cover, which was very sparse because of the deer issue. But we looked at what was there. We tried to identify native plants, especially like rare and keystone species um, on the forest floor. We marked where those were. We tried to find a large enough plot to where we could find an equal as a control somewhere else with similar species composition. And when the exclosures are up, you can do, we recommend one of two ways or both. You can do spring ephemeral studies where you look at native flowering plants and you take counts and heights and ages and all of that of the spring ephemerals that you see both within the exclosure and what you do or do not see outside of the exclosure. And then you can do a summer woody plant study where you can do browse surveys on woody species saplings and everything to see if there are any noticeable deer browse marks. Or if there's just damage to plants, you get to record how tall your tree species can get. Because oftentimes oak saplings get snatched up by deer and eaten by deer before they can even establish. So, doing those types of studies is really good to keep an eye on oak tree species as they go through growing and everything to make sure that oak regeneration can happen in your forest as well. Um, Let me know if I missed anything or if that answered your question, but there's a lot of really cool ways that you can monitor the ecology. You can do biodiversity surveys by just taking species counts within a couple transects inside of your exclosure studies. We laid all of the methods out and everything in our plan, like very specifically as a like a stepped approach. So again, everybody can kind of do the same methods, have all the same range of data, all that stuff.
I think I'm thinking of it as a way of maintaining community support for
Mm-hmm.
the whole project to
Yeah.
explain the benefits.
Yes, absolutely. And the cool thing about the citizen science aspect of it all is photo monitoring itself for exclosures is really popular because it can give you a visual of how it changes over time, which is it's cool to see. And that's really approachable and easy to do by people who are just passing by, especially if you have like a phone stand up by your signs. You just put your phone in there, take your picture, and you upload it to like a drive or something. So it's all in one place. And the same thing with a really quick survey. You show a couple photos of, say, trillium. A deer love to eat trillium, but trillium's really important for a forest. So you put up a photo of trillium and you say, do you see this inside the exclosure? Yes or no. Do you see this outside of the exclosure? Yes or no. And then you have a data point to go towards it. And then people, they feel involved in the science. It's a cool thing. It's like when you go to a science museum and you get to play with all the little machines and see how the science works. Like you feel like you know more because you got to play with it. You got to have a hand in it. So that's kind of the idea that we were thinking of with monitoring the exclosures like ecologically and keeping the public involved in a really playful, lighthearted way.
So just to follow up on the deer exclosure, when Ann Arbor was doing the deer calls a few years ago, there were some exclosures put in a few different nature areas. And Jacqueline Corto did counts at that point in time. She has continued to do counts. I go out with her in the spring and help her count the stuff. And those exclosures are still there. So if anybody wants to go see them in 5 or 6 weeks when all the plants are up, you can definitely see the difference between what's inside and what's outside, and the difference of just the amount of green stuff is really all one is brown and one is green. Green is good. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
simple way of looking at it. So,
Cool.
Commissioner Graham, you have a question?
Um, Thank you, young people, and thank you, Michael, for what I consider a very enthusiastic round of support for managing deer numbers. Um, and you all are right. Um, we went through the ringer in Ann Arbor. That is to say, the political leaders went through the ringer. The criticisms and scathing, nasty communications from all over the world came in here, buoyed by 4 or 5 completely false arguments. with regard to deer management. I was deeply involved in the group that helped stimulate this activity in Ann Arbor, and we scoured the country for information as it stood 10 years ago, or maybe a bit more now, for the best practices and best knowledge that we could. We assembled it on our website. I don't know if we have a chat here. I'd probably put the address in here, but many of you kids probably saw it. Certainly Michael knows about it. Brian, are you doing bow hunting or are you doing firearm hunting or both on your various sites?
So there's the calls are with sharpshooter trained, with USDA calls. So we figure a governmental organization versus a nuisance control company would be more reputable and more palatable for residents to feel like, okay, they're safer with somebody with a gun out there, but we don't advertise when they're going to be out there. We did the call. It was 3 nights. Nobody even knew it took place. Nobody had any idea because we didn't get the word out, and we were recommended not to do that because when you do that, you have people that come out and try to stop it and pick it, and it becomes an unsafe situation. So based on their infrared and their technology, they're able to see if there's anybody in the park or any areas that they're at, so it's safe. The hunts are strictly in the more urban areas. Now, in terms of the larger statewide plan, there's some. So Kent County is working on the same thing, and we're collaborating with them. And Jerry Byrne, the Kent County Road Commissioner, is on the subcommittee for the plan. So we're looking at things at a wide angle in terms of you may allow, if you're in a more rural area just outside of a city, there may be guns allowed for hunting based on the ordinances and things set in place. But in a lot of, like in Farmington Hills, in our areas, it'll be bow and crossbow, and people would need to have experience with hunting and years of achieving a hunting license or purchasing a hunting license. They have to go through shooting proficiency. The one thing we're working on proposing is a statewide draw, sort of like the elk draw. So basically hunters are excited about being able to hunt in a new place and have access. So once those places and properties are identified within cities, so let's say Farmington Hills identifies 10 locations that we're going to allow tree stands to be placed, and we will place them with the USDA or our partners. So working with property owners that want us to come out and get on their property, tree stands will be placed to the start of it. People will be selected through a draw after they sort of put their raffle ticket in there and purchased it for the amount of $10, for example. And let's say they get selected for the draw. Now they have to purchase the license for $200. And with that, they can harvest 2 bucks and 10 doe. So they get so many permits, and then they're going to be allowed to use that tree stand 5 times. And then there's a leader from the collaboration that will, on the day of the hunt, it'll be, say, a Saturday evening. There's going to be 10 hunters that meet with the leaders. The leader's going to walk them out to their spot. They're going to say, hook up to your tree stand safety rope. They're going to go up in the tree. They're going to be able to hunt. They're going to communicate via text communication. The leader's going to go back out there with the ice fishing sled. And they're going to, and whether it's snow on the ground or not, we just don't want to track blood over properties. So once the deer is collected, they would put them in that sled. They would take them to a location to do the field dressing all in one spot. So it's not going to be laying in, innards are not going to be laying on the ground, all these different places across the city. And now you got coyote problems. So they're going to take them to a specific facility. At that point, hunters will be able to take a certain number of deer with them to be able to use themselves for venison, and the rest will go to food banks to be distributed. So I will say just one comment that you made was, people coming after leadership. I had people putting my kids' faces on social media and threatening. When I got home, I got a police escort the night of one of the meetings. I literally put a shotgun by my bed, and it's still there to this day. And when I walk out of my car at work, I look behind my shoulder and I worry about things. So it's definitely a real thing, but I've gotten through it with my faith, and I just pray like, hey, help these people understand. And but I'm not going to, it is what it is, and it's going to happen. And people have gotten death threats in communities across the country when these things occur. but again, we've got to move forward and do the right thing.
So I'm confused. There's genuinely a difference between hunters out there doing stuff and trained licensed sharpshooters out there doing stuff.
Yep.
Which are you using and
So
where?
both. So both. So let's say Farmington Hills, their goal based on we're trying to shoot 100 deer a year, just as an example. Let's say that. So the hunters come out and they're able to hunt through an organized system with people taking them out there. They're able to hunt 5 days in early January, let's say. So they will have that opportunity. And let's say those hunters using bows and crossbows were able to harvest 50 deer. So after that, the USDA brings in sharpshooters, trained sharpshooters, to with their goal of not hunting, but of shooting 50 more deer to reach harvest goal.
Culling.
Yeah, so Meridian Township's got a great example, and they've been doing it for several years, and they've seen native plant species like trillium come back in their forests, and they've been doing it with a combination of hunting and sharpshooting, and it's worked. So the difference between Meridian Township and what we're doing in more of the urbanized areas is more controlled hunting, organized, versus letting people go out there free reign and go to their spot whenever they want to go. This is more of specific times that it can take place because residents don't feel comfortable with people walking an orange down the street. We get that, but they also need to. We want to educate them on the importance of still allowing those opportunities in a more controlled atmosphere.
And the hunters are restricted to bows only?
In more urbanized areas, that will be in the plan, bows and crossbows only. And this is where the plan can be flexible. If you're in Kent County and you're more of an urban / rural, like, Ann Arbor has some places like that, or Superior Township where, or in Saline, you may allow guns in certain areas, and there may already be no ordinances against hunting in those areas. So you may allow that to take place. But in those areas where there's ordinances against it, that comes down to what is the collaboration and the community feel more comfortable with. And bows and crossbows, the trajectory of that weapon is it's more safe than it might be with a bullet. So it may be more palatable for communities to go that route. And it's more, again, organized effort where people aren't on their own just going to do it wherever they want to do it. They're placed in places where it's safe locations that are identified previously to them going out.
Yeah, and this year, this was the first year, right, Brian? So it just started in January. So this year, it was just the USDA sharpshooters this year. And so going forward, the plan would be for there to be sharpshooters picking up what was left, to bring the deer numbers down to the target level.
And were most of your sharpshooting sites on parks, or were there a substantial number of private property locations?
Great question, because most places that are identified by communities are in public places and parks and DPW grounds, places like that. We had one private location that we tested out. What we found was, unfortunately, which was predicted in advance, that the deer were not on the public parcels during the time of the call. A lot of them were on private parcels. So
not dummies.
We needed access to private land, and a lot of residents were saying, come on over. And we needed to have more properties to be able to have a safe shot in a safe location. They needed to be able to shoot parallel to the backs of properties versus perpendicular where homes are backed up to homes. So that was one thing the USDA recommended in the report, that we need to have more access to private land. So those people that are calling up saying, do something about the deer, now we're saying, okay, you help us out by filling out this form and allowing access. And we're going to be able to achieve, harvest goal if you do that. And they're all willingly they're doing it. Every day there's more people signing up on that sheet.
So you said something about not giving notice that you're going to be culling in a certain location. Here we gave widespread public notice and closed parks and had a whole bunch of interference. The
Thanks
university
for
was very
testing that
good.
out. We learned from you.
The university is very good
Yeah.
about keeping people out, but the city police would not. So it was a real genuine hassle.
Yeah, we
So
saved on resources, police resources, so we didn't have to station. They were aware of it. They were aware. We told the police, so the USDA handled that. They contacted all the different, the county, our local police, and they have requirements to do that. So it was all they knew about it, and our dispatch knew about it, and our command desk knew about it, but we had no issues throughout all 3
so
nights.
they were flying drones or something, to make sure nobody was around, and
No, the infrared technology and they're able to see if a mouse jumps on the ground, they can see if there's any movement. So they're able to, before they take shots, they see the whole area based on their technology that they have provided to the USDA.
so they're very quiet about where they put bait piles and so on.
Yeah, they try to keep it, very inconspicuous. They don't put a big pile. They sort of sprinkle it around. And yeah, the only issue we had was a park ranger was closing up the park, and they happened to see the USDA come in and said, what are you doing here? And that was the only, because our staff was closing up the park that night and they weren't aware of it. So we made them aware of it at that moment, and it still was okay.
So I'm still hunting a picture I have around here that was taken of my grandfather, Sam Graham, on the George Reserve up in Livingston County in the 1940s of a deer exclosure. Great trees and huge diversity inside the exclosure and almost bare land outside it. I can remember when Arbor Hills had trillium in it, great rafts of it. Barton Hills had great rafts of trillium. They aren't there now. And many other species of wildflowers aren't there anymore. It's something we really need to do to protect our biodiversity in the city of Ann Arbor.
We share that study, the George Irwin study, as part of the presentation. The DNR has it on there, and I live a half mile from there. It's an awesome property. Yeah, beautiful area.
Deer and autumn olive.
So I think we need to kind of wrap up this presentation because we have another one to go and we don't want to be here too late tonight. So Brian, thank you very much, and the Mike and the whole C's team. That was really great information. I know I'm going to think about who I can share it with outside of the city of Ann Arbor and in different communities in this area and see what other movement we can get on this for you. So it sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I have a quick little question. Would you be willing to give us your contact information, Brian?
Yep. I'll tell you right now, I was going to email it, but I'll just say it. So you can email me directly if you want to be involved in the coalition. It's really like-minded individuals like all of us here is talking about this problem and working through it and sharing resources. So it's bfarmer@fhgov.com. And I'm on the calendar for this meeting invite, so you should be able to find me there too. But feel free to reach out and I'll send you the next meeting invite.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, students. Thank you, students. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for the opportunity. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
So next is returnable containers work group presentation. I don't know who's talking on this one.
Hello everyone. I'm happy to present with the working group for returnable containers. My name is Genevieve Rattray. I am the Sustainability and Innovation Manager at the Office of Sustainability and Innovation within the City of Ann Arbor. And I was very excited to work with a group of commissioners on the returnable containers work group and council members on this work group. It's a project that launched in 2021 with a pilot, and we're looking to take it to scale. And we've done some really great work on it. First, I want to start off with huge gratitude for the team that worked on this working group. So Councilmember Malik, Councilmember Cornell, Commissioner Dale, and Commissioner Smith. Thank you, everyone, for all the work that you have done. I'm missing one slide. So some of the logistics that our working group did as we met for 4 months from October, November through today, which is we're wrapping up today with our presentation. And before the council members and commissioners get into their deliverables, I wanted to give a little bit of background information on returnable containers in Ann Arbor. So the returnable containers pilot, which is also known as A2R3, launched in 2021 with a small but very passionate group of businesses partnering with committed community volunteers. The city of Ann Arbor invested in the initial batch of containers, which is what the photo here is. Many of the containers looked very much like that, while volunteers established a checkout and check-in process. And restaurants very enthusiastically offered this service to their customers. They hosted return bins. They were committed to sanitizing every single container, which is no small feat for a restaurant to do whatsoever. After a few months, excitement was really, really high about the program, but participation was low. And the pilot program offered some really invaluable insights that it's very clear in Ann Arbor we have an appetite for returnable containers, and that with broad participation, so taking it to scale, the convenience around it can be built and it can be incredibly competitive with single use. And taking this to a city scale would allow us to move beyond this niche idea and become a practical everyday choice for our community. So some of the folks, the restaurants and businesses who led the charge in 2021, and some of these still have the returnable containers in their restaurant. You can go to Next Door Cafe, order a slice of cake, and say, "Can I have it in a returnable container?" I did this just a couple weeks ago, and without skipping a beat, staff is trained and they're doing it. So Zingerman's Delicatessen and Next Door Cafe, Cinnaholic, El Harissa, Ginger Deli, and Miss Kim were all leading the charge on the restaurants who started in 2021 with the pilot program. So fast forward to 2024, this fantastic funding opportunity arose that could potentially finance taking the returnable containers pilot program to scale. And together, the Office of Sustainability, with some key partners in businesses, institutions, organizations, co-created a vision, and we submitted a $20 million grant to bring this initiative to the municipal level. Our proposal was to create a universal citywide system for returnable food and beverage containers to replace single-use packaging in Ann Arbor institutions. AAPS, they were super on board with the elementary school, still are, our local venues and our restaurants. It was really important for us to place equity at the core and at the forefront of this program. So we designed this fully accessible return incentive program, kind of like a library card of sort, where one would be given to each household, and every member of every household would have a dedicated number of containers they could quote unquote check out without paying a fee. And as long as they kept them in circulation, there was no fee for them. But then if they didn't return it, then it would go down to 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they'd have to start paying. But really looking at how do we make this accessible and equitable. In January 2025, very unfortunately, the grant was no longer available. So we have this, the silver lining, we have this beautiful vision. We have invested partners. And we are back to the drawing board on funding, but working really, really hard to see how we can move this forward. We do recognize it's something that our community has a huge appetite for. It would be a fantastic place to launch it. It would be something, I know in the state of Michigan, we have the ban on banning auxiliary containers. This would be a wonderful blueprint to have voluntary participation, and it could create pathways for other communities to move forward with doing this despite the ban on banning single-use plastic. Why go big? Why take it to scale? For the environment, a citywide system means bigger environmental benefits and a real alternative to single-use plastic and packaging, I should say. Economics, a well-used system means lower costs for everyone involved, and it remains financially competitive with single-use packaging. And then the experience, a single system means a more seamless experience for the businesses, for the participants, for the residents and the tourists and the visitors who are all using the system. And how something like this works is that a customer borrows a cup or container from a restaurant, cafe, cafeteria. There are anchor institutions such as University of Michigan, Ann Arbor Public Schools that really support the high return rate in the beginning, and then those smaller businesses and businesses that really keep the volume going for the adoption rate. The customers return the empty cups or containers to a drop-off bin. Bins are emptied on a regular schedule, and the items are brought to a central washing facility, which was a core component of the grant that we submitted. Containers are washed and sanitized, and then the sanitized containers are redistributed to the restaurants, the businesses, and the institutions. So that's a very simplified version of how this works. Oh, the working group structure and deliverables. So the working group has been working hard since October. We met in October, December, February, March, and we're presenting here today very excitedly. The deliverables that we came up together was a list of similar programs in the United States, Canada, and Europe, preferably in operation and at scale. Just a note that there is not a municipal level returnable containers program in the United States at this point. We do have partners over in Hilo, Hawaii, who just signed a vendor and are looking to launch the first one in the coming months, but that still leaves us the continental United States to be the first. So we're really excited about that possibility. A list of co-benefits of returnable container programs, because of course there are so many different benefits to doing this. I mean, just thinking about some research that the Huron River Watershed Council has done around the Huron River having the most microplastics out of any of the tributaries leading to the Great Lakes. And a lot of that is coming from various forms of plastic and plastic pollution. And then a list, the final deliverable is a list of potential funding opportunities, which is one of our biggest barriers at the moment that we are looking to knock down. So right now, I'm going to pass the mic over to Councilmember Cornell and Commissioner Smith to go through their sub-working group of Deliverable 1.
Thanks, Genevieve. Yeah, it's been great working with everyone on this project. So Jen and I looked at the co-benefits of returnable containers primarily because of the kind of funding debacle that this program has landed in with the grant being canceled last year. So we're looking for co-benefits that can be included in a grant proposal or other, funding proposals that show that this is beneficial on many different scales. And so, there's not that much research. Like Genevieve mentioned, there's not really like municipal programs in the US. There's some similar programs globally. There's been, I think the most studies I saw were in China, but there's really not that much that is similar to what Ann Arbor is proposing and trying to bring to life. And so a lot of the research I ended up looking at was similar plastic reduction programs and just the benefits of reducing single-use plastic in communities and extrapolating from that. And from that, I found co-benefits related to culture, the economy, community livability and well-being, and the environment. And a lot of these, for us, might seem kind of intuitive, like reduction of plastic pollution on the streets, in the storm drains, and in the rivers, reduction in CO2 that would be used to make single-use plastic containers. And, at scale, these can reduce costs for businesses and consumers and the municipality that is implementing a program like this. You want to go to the next slide, Genevieve? And so the major takeaways in my research of the co-benefits chiefly was that the benefits can only be realized if the container program is scaled up to a certain point, because there's a threshold of the number of uses of one of these containers, and below that threshold, it is actually more carbon emissions and more environmentally impactful to use a returnable container just because they're a little heavier, there's a little more plastic involved in them. And so I think the research I read, the threshold was around 30 uses. And so you want that program to be up to scale. And that's where, bringing this to a municipal level is really important, and getting all the stakeholders and community involved so that we can reach that threshold and these benefits can be realized across the community and also literally downstream in the Huron River. And that was one thing that we thought was a really good opportunity for Ann Arbor to explore more is the co-benefits to the Huron River because of the research that I read about reducing single-use plastic and the positive impacts on waterways. And you can see these graphics from a study that was done at the Great Lakes. A lot of the plastic pollution and the plastic litter that's found on beaches and near waterways is it's food related and it's plastic. And so reducing those single-use plastics in our community can help reduce the plastic pollution that's entering the Huron River watershed and therefore the Great Lakes as well. And I think people really care about their waterways here in Michigan and specifically the Huron River in Ann Arbor. And so that's a good way to get people excited and to care about this initiative a little more if they can see that it's not just about a returnable container and not using single plastic. It's about protecting our waterways and our environment and these more indirect impacts that can be realized through a program like this. So I hope that these co-benefits can be taken forward by Genevieve and her team, and hopefully they can get some momentum going for the funding and to make this container program a reality.
Thank you so much. And yes, absolutely. Looking forward to leveraging all of the work that you did on deliverable 1 and moving along to deliverable 2, Councilmember Malik and Commission Member Dale.
Thank you. And I echo Commissioner Smith's sentiments that it was a great working group and I learned a lot working with this sub-working group. So I thank all of them. In terms of deliverable 2, we were asked to look into some comparable initiatives across the country. What communities have, implemented this and what has worked and what hasn't. If you could go to the next slide, Genevieve. Here's a brief overview of some of the things we found. And Ms. Donnelly earlier today, I believe, emailed out the spreadsheet that it contains a lot of this information in greater detail if you're interested in digging in more. But one of our first takeaways was that, there aren't a lot of examples across the country. There were a handful across different communities. And again, these weren't necessarily municipal run programs. These were whether a private group or small kind of subgroups within a community operating these. There were also a handful of programs within different universities across the country. So kind of a quick summary of some of the things we found across these existing programs include that there was a mix of open loop and closed loop systems. Closed loop, of course, being something like running a returnable containers program just in one dining hall at a university. So that's kind of the only institution participating, the only maybe, one kitchen participating, as opposed to an open loop, which would be, multiple businesses and things like that across a community. We found pretty quickly that the closed loop was, of course, easier because you had greater control and a higher return of containers. But of course, that means the kind of the impact is a little closer to home and isn't as great as the potential an open loop system could reach. And there was a variety of implementation methods that some included an app, others included messaging through a school system and email system as well. And then in terms of some of the successes and challenges we found of these existing programs, some of the successes included how some of them operated in terms of a fee structure to essentially pay for themselves. Some of the private programs, like the one in Portland, implemented a yearly subscription fee where you could basically get a number of containers at the start and you could return them at any point, but you could typically keep them for a year or more. We did find, of course, that Portland program does not appear to maybe be in effect still, in operation still. So that was kind of unfortunate as well. Other successes include utilizing volunteers to kind of get the word out about this program being in operation, as well as kind of educating on how to return containers, where to return them, and things like that. Some of the challenges included, as Commissioner Smith mentioned, reaching that critical threshold of use, reaching the critical threshold of number of uses per container to kind of make the financial side work out. And then, of course, making sure you get some of the containers back. So you're not just throwing away reusable containers and adding to the landfill. Next slide, Genevieve. And we were also asked to kind of look at some of the potential funding opportunities for programs. As Commissioner Smith mentioned, one of the big benefits of a returnable containers program is largely the effect on, your local watershed system, water quality, by kind of diverting trash both from the landfill, but also, potential litter and things like that from the environment. So it's perhaps no surprise that a lot of the funding opportunities come from kind of environmentally focused groups like the EPA and private groups like that are listed here. One of the benefit of the higher education programs that implemented these programs were that they were able to charge a fee kind of directly to their student body, whether that's a direct student fee to every student, or implementing a green fund like at Northern Arizona University that they could then draw down. And a little bit closer to home, we found some grants like the Circular Economy Grant at Eagle, and at EPA, the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling Grant. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. And, as Genevieve said, this would be one of the first municipal-wide programs. So this is a little bigger than, some of the other ones that have been implemented across the country. So any grant funding we would get would, of course, be very welcome. And that's it for me. Back to you, Genevieve.
Thank you, Councilmember Malik. So wrapping up next steps, we do have this big, bold vision to be the first citywide returnable container program in the continental United States. We're working towards establishing the structure and the funding to make it happen. We're actively working, actively seeking. This is a huge vision for us. We're talking with Parks about having an architect come in for a preliminary assessment around needs, sizing, and equipment. The wash station, of course, being the big infrastructure around making this happen. And not having a wash station is one of the biggest barriers around making it happen through a lot of the engagement we've done in the past with this. We're looking at space throughout the city, and we're seeking collaborators that want to make this vision a reality. And thank you. Thank you to the working group. Thank you to the commission for watching our presentation on the work that the working group has done over the past several months. And this is something we're really excited about. Happy to take any questions if there's time for that.
Sure. How does it work for visitors? People who come in down to, say, watch a football game and leave. What do they do?
They would have the option to participate, but it may not be the most convenient for them. So the returnable containers would not be the only option. Hopefully it would be the default option. But for someone who is coming in for a one time and then leaving, most likely they're either eating at the restaurant, because again, you have to think this is also takeout. So folks might be coming in for a football game, eating at a restaurant, leaving, where this is more of, I'm going to a restaurant, and instead of them giving me my food in a plastic or in a whatever is being used at the moment in some sort of throwaway container, I'm getting this returnable container that I'm taking home.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Thanks for the presentation. There are a lot of interesting thoughts I have about this. And I guess, so I'm just going to rattle through a bunch of questions and hope that we can hit them. I wonder if anyone can address the issue of kind of the difference between carbon reduction or even plastics reduction, comparing single use versus production of plastic and use of that, and potential microplastics from washing and reusing the plastic containers that are described in this program. Has there been any thought about incentivizing people to use their own personal containers when they go to a restaurant, maybe giving them a little discount so they don't have to take a container from the establishment? And I kind of liked if we're going to have a container, I liked the idea of the stainless steel version versus plastic. That's a personal
Yeah.
preference.
Absolutely. And I can hop on the third point that you made. A lot of this would be co-designed with the stakeholders participating. I personally am of the same personal thoughts of stainless steel. At home, I use glass returnable containers. I know that's not going to be a community-based option, but stainless steel, of course. But there are some co-designing that would be needed. So for example, just throwing out an example we've heard in the past. If you have a coffee shop who is marketing on a pink drink, they might need something that is clear to be able to show that. So being able to meet the needs of the business while also meeting the environmental needs. I agree with you wholeheartedly. If I had a magic wand, it would all be stainless steel. So that would be something as we moved forward with making the program a reality, it would be very much co-designed based on research, based on science, and then also based on stakeholder needs.
Can you comment also on the $20 million budget? I was kind of surprised about that.
It's a big price tag to be able to create a wash station and all of the infrastructure needed to make it happen, including the vehicles and the return bins and the inventory is a little bit on the smaller side of it than the bigger infrastructure pieces, but it easily is about a $20 million price tag to have a wash station facility that then is circulating around the city of Ann Arbor for collection and drop off in the bins and the technology to make that happen.
I guess I would ask for an assessment of the sustainability of that process and all. Thanks.
Commissioner Dale?
Yeah, thanks. This is more just like a stream of thought. First, it was a really fun working group to be on, so Genevieve, thank you, and to everybody else too. I Something that I think is interesting is trying to strike this balance between having Commissioner Malik mentioned about if it's a closed loop system, it's easier to have like higher return rates. There's a lot more control and you can get that return rate, but it's much harder to get the scale that's necessary, as everybody mentioned. And so something that I think is worth looking at as a next step, maybe is one of the next steps, is unfortunately, but I think the case is true, that a lot of people take to go stuff and actually don't go far. I see this a lot at the university, right? So it's, for example, like at the union, people take their to go in that case, like styrofoam or plastic, and they'll go sit somewhere else in the union. And so I haven't done the waste audit, but I would love to. I'm willing to bet 90% of the stuff that is purchased from the vendors in that space doesn't even leave the building. And I'm willing to bet that there are other places that are like event places or gathering places around the city where that's also true, where there's almost like these little micro, micro closed loop systems where your return rate, because of just people's behavior in that space, that the return rate is maybe very high. So you might get a lot of bang for your buck looking for where those like little hubs might be. I'm really curious about that. And if that's something that is of interest, I'd be happy to sort of brainstorm on that as a next step. But the question that came up about, what about visitors to campus? That's sort of what made me start thinking about that, is that those are often those types of spaces where people might go and take food and go sit somewhere nearby, but they haven't gone home either, right? So it might be actually easier to get a high amount of return capture in those spaces.
Commissioner Colvin Garcia?
I have a much more targeted question. What is the what qualifies as the threshold for reusing? So like how many reuses?
A lot of that depends on the type of material that the threshold for reusing, I'm sorry, is I think I was recently in a panel discussion where this question was asked, and it was said that it was 2. So more than once equals
More
reuse.
than one.
I do think there is not always a solid definition for that, but the definition I've come across is 2 equals reuse. But of course, for various environmental impacts, you want more than that because you want to be able to justify the energy that goes into creating the materials to be able to justify it. So our threshold would be much higher.
Thank you.
Commissioner Levin?
Yeah. So you're saying like 30 is the threshold for making it like a sustainable program. I'm wondering like if we're using plastic, for example, what's like the like how many reuses could we theoretically get? Like have you looked into like the lifespan after you like are washing this plastic a number of times and using it is like how many times could you really use it?
Absolutely. Various materials have have various lifespans. So I've seen in the hundreds for like metals, stainless steel, I'm sorry, and then single-use plastic, or not single-use plastic, but plastic might have a little bit less. Oftentimes, I think what I've seen in some of the smaller scale, because again, there haven't been any large scale systems in the United States. So in some of the smaller scale businesses that are doing this, they oftentimes say the material just becomes less appealing looking. So people don't want to use it as much if it's all scratched up or there's concerns around that. But I do think with stainless steel, it's in the hundreds. I have some data that I can get to you. I just don't have it at my fingertips right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think stainless steel would be, I mean, as we all would love to have that. Of course, I mean, the more you use plastic, I mean, as we hear, the microplastics is a problem just for the user of potentially ingesting the microplastics as you tend to scratch it. Maybe someone's microwaving this plastic, hopefully not, but and then just one other sort of thought, and I don't know, maybe you've looked into this and I do remember reading a while ago, this is a little bit different about some of the first couple of states that required reusable bags by law. And one of the sort of unintended consequences is that, like, at least maybe in the beginning, I don't know if it's has changed, but like people are forgetting and then they're just buying all these reusable bags, which is actually worse than if they used like paper bags every time. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not sure if that's something you've thought about, but
Of course, I think there is a component of social infrastructure matching the physical infrastructure that's needed. So really needing to understand and socialize and normalize the concept behind it. So that is it needs to be leveraged and used and have there be an adoption rate for it to be incredibly successful. Exactly what you were saying with like the canvas totes and things like that. If people buy them and they're not using them, then it's not having that impact that justifies the energy used to create that piece of material. So within launching a program like this, there is a deep amount of community engagement, outreach, education, so that the social infrastructure is matching the physical infrastructure that we have. We've done some small scale episodic pilots of this. So for example, we worked with the Guild in the fall to bring returnable cups to A2 Oktoberfest, which was incredibly successful. The return rate and adoption rate were in the 90%, and people were enthusiastic and excited. And when they went to get their beverage, they were like, "Oh, this is fantastic!" And the feedback was wonderful. So we have been looking at how we can do kind of a bridge program in a way that is supporting the socialization of people coming to Ann Arbor and coming to Ann Arbor events and being able to access returnables or reusables in that way. So we did do that in the fall. But you're spot on that it needs to be leveraged and used and have a high adoption rate for it to be impactful.
yeah, I mean, I think incentives would certainly go a long way, and they could keep track of how many times that they reuse it, and maybe that would result in some sort of discount someplace or something.
Excellent.
Who else has questions? Anybody else? Well, thank you for the presentation, Genevieve, and the rest of the team. That was really interesting. Hopefully, Ann Arbor will get there eventually, and you'll find $20 million just sitting around to start this. It's
Wonderful.
impressive.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay. So next is work group updates, building decarbonization. Joe, is there anything on that? It looks like you're still on the meeting.
Yep, I'm here just dealing with sunset blocking out and making me look like witness protection. So I'm still here. Yeah, we met. It was last month. We talked a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing from the city side and where we're getting up. Sam Kachuk from our office joined. He's our new commercial building analyst who's kind of going to be leading up the work around that area. So we met with him, talked about some of the things that he is getting started on, and then made some suggestions on that. And so we're gonna get another meeting on the calendar so we can continue going through and getting ready for our conclusion in the next 2 months or so, which we might talk a little bit more about what that means going forward. So more to come.
Okay, thanks. So your returnable containers, I'm assuming there's nothing else left on returnable containers to talk about. Sidewalk gap filling, Aaron, is there anything new updates on that, or are we all crossing that one off the list?
It still has to pass Transportation Commission. So I did present to the Transportation Commission last month, but it's a long story. It was kind of they had a last minute opening, but the commission actually didn't see the materials beforehand. And so they opted to vote on it tomorrow, actually. And so it'll be coming back up to the Transportation Commission tomorrow. That is expected to pass.
Okay. All right. Water quality?
Yeah, so we met recently for the chloride working group, and I'm in the process of drafting a white paper based on some recommendations from that working group. I think Sarah or Steve is on this call. So I should have that wrapped up this week for their review, and we should have hopefully something to share with you all in May.
Okay, great. Next is staff updates or city council updates. Is there any city council updates relative to this commission?
I'll just give a quick one. If folks go to the Engage website, so engage.e2gov.org, the city just launched a survey for all residents to help develop its stormwater comprehensive plan. And I thought that that would be of interest for this group. Some of the things that it is hoping to accomplish with this plan, which would be the first of its kind in Michigan and in our Great Lakes region. So that's kind of exciting, are some climate adaptation strategies and watershed planning efforts. And so I would just encourage folks to participate in that and help spread the word, because the more data we can collect, the stronger the plan will be in the end.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Councilmember Malik, we didn't consult beforehand, so I don't know if he has anything.
No, that was great. The only thing I was going to mention is something kind of more general and high level, but the city administrator will be presenting the next fiscal year budget at our Monday meeting, which is April 20th. So this would be the fiscal year budget that starts July 1st. And that is before a council vote on the overall budget later in May. So if you are a budget fanatic like myself, feel free to tune in. Thanks.
We might wait for the YouTube version so we can go faster through it.
There you
go. Aaron, do you want to put the staff updates up?
Sure. Okay, go back up to the top. I know we're right at 8, so I'll move pretty quickly through this. But the comprehensive land use plan was officially approved by council on March 16th, unanimously, which is a great milestone. And so staff will start implementation of that right away with review of our city codes. A bunch of cool events coming up from OSI. The next sustainability forum is April 28th, which will talk about the A20 community cookbook. Earth Day Festival, I might have given this update last time as well. I can't remember, so apologies. But it was April. It will be on Sunday from 12 to 4:30 at the Leslie Nature and Science Center. And that is an annual event for the OSI team. The A2 Climate Teach-In, April 25th at Mitchell Elementary School. And yeah, Joe, jump in anytime to expand on any of these as well. The lawn care rebates program has expanded to allow residents and businesses to trade in gas and yard care equipment. Folks can go to that website to learn more about that. And then announcing some recent Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grant winners include Sun Bundle and Ann Arbor Joyride. And those total $17,500. And then again, save the date for A20 week. I gave this update last time too, but that will be May 31st through June 6th. And then for public services, Congresswoman Dingell hosted a roundtable discussion with the EPA for next steps on the Gilman Superfund site. And so a bunch of leadership from the city and surrounding communities attended that. And a bunch of community members as well. I know Commissioner Mitchell was there along with myself, and we got to meet the EPA staff that will be kind of spearheading the Superfund effort. It
was really
great,
exciting.
It was very exciting. A lot of folks were very hopeful in the room, was my impression. And then yes, Councilmember Cornell shared the information about the stormwater survey already. And then I wanted to give a quick shout out to public services staff for cleaning up post national championship celebration, and as well as the post parade on Saturday. There was a lot of late night following the championship win. And then a quick note that this year construction season downtown will be very busy. There'll be a lot of road closures for folks that commute to downtown or work downtown, or just traveling from east to west. I encourage you to go to this link, and you can kind of see a map between May and August and plan accordingly for those closures. And those are all my updates.
Thanks. So next is public comment. Please call 888-789-0000, enter meeting ID 9987-619-2402. Please, to raise your hand, please press *9. To unmute, press *6. City staff will select callers who have raised their hand. Using the last three digits of your phone number, please state your name, address at the beginning of the comments. Do we have any callers, Aaron?
No callers.
Okie dokie. Next meeting will be in person with a hybrid option. So hopefully if you are available to attend in person, you can. It's always better that way. But we will have hybrid for the people who need hybrid. It'll be at City Hall in some conference room that Aaron will tell us about later sometime.
Yes, TBD, but I will let you know soon.
And is there anything else that people want to ask questions about? Or is there a meeting to adjourn, a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
There we go. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right. See you next month. We only run over about 5 minutes, so that's not too bad.
It's
Thanks,
pretty
everyone.
good.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.